Alright, so before we get going, if you guys have seen a few of my videos, you know I'm always talking about grabbing your favorite snacks. Well, I'm a person who loves to snack. I never really eat 3 meals a day. Sometimes it's only 1, but it's great because I stay active and it just kind of keeps my metabolism going if I snack a little bit. So, one of my favorite snacks is pickles. And what I found is these are called Wickles. And I actually got them on the shelf at Walmart because I would say my favorite ones to get are the Best Made brand, like MAID. And I found that sometimes my local Walmart doesn't have them. You know, I might buy 3 jars at a time because I know they're not going to have them for a few months next time I go back. So anyway, I gotta say, these things are awesome. And if you guys like to snack on pickles, don't be afraid to try these. Buy them so that these people, I don't know if they're like a new company, I've never seen them before, maybe they've been around for a while, I haven't really researched on them, but keep them in business. These are great. And if you like the Best Made kosher spicy baby dills, these are basically the same thing. You've got the little red peppers in them, you know, and the garlic, that's great. I even like typically drink the juice when I'm done because I like it so much. But I would say that if you like those, the way that these compare is they're a little bit spicier, and these are actually a little bit bigger. Still not near as big as what you'd get, you know, when you get those huge dill pickles, but they're like perfect snack size. So thought I'd share this with you guys. If you like pickles, try these things because I like them. I'll buy them again for sure. And next time I might, if they have the Best Made brand, I might just get a jar or 2 of each because I'll go through them. See y'all. Cheers. Woo. So this one is a little Yamaha Spinet piano I actually picked up for free. Somebody was moving and they didn't have use for it. And she's like, well, I don't know what to do. Half the keys don't work. So this one needed a lot of work. Let's dive into it. You're going to see everything I had to go through to get this piano back in playable condition, get it pretty again, and get ready to sell it. So when I picked this one up, it looked like it was in pretty decent shape. And you know, a lot of pianos, you can fix keys that aren't working with pretty simple procedures. Sometimes it's felts that are worn out or something stuck in there near the key, but this one was a different story. I would say 1 out of every 3 keys were not working properly. And I came to find out later on when I got this thing all opened up that there's these little pieces of string and 95% of them were broken. Then there's these bridal straps and a good number of those were broken. So ultimately, to get this piano playable again, you know, in the end ended up taking me a lot longer than expected. But overall, the cosmetic restoration of this thing went well and I thought it came out really cool. So we're going to go through it. Everything from wood veneer that was peeling off super easily, I decided to get rid of, you know, all the way through the paint job, polishing the pedals, and restoring the fabric sound grill that kind of goes over the bottom section. We're going to get into all of it. Now, when I went to pick up this piano, the main thing that impressed me about it, not only that it was a Yamaha, and Yamaha pianos hold pretty good value, but it sounded great. When you actually could get a note to play, they sounded really good. And one thing, if you know pianos or you don't even, these short pianos, these really short spinet upright pianos is what they're called, a spinet, they usually have the worst bass section. So I've seen spinet pianos where the bottom 6 or 7 keys I just don't even like to use because they sound terrible. It's almost like just hitting a piece of metal and it's like ping, you know, you don't get a good bass note out of it. Yamaha obviously has put in the time to figure it out, along with, you know, Baldwin and some of the other brands. So even their small upright pianos can still have a really good sound in the bass section. And with this piano, that was the case. I said, okay, it looks great on the inside. The strings look good, you know, minus the issues that were giving it problems in the action. Everything else looked good. The harp looked really good on it. You know, everything was pretty clean. So this one to me was worth picking up. And not only, you know, did it sound good, it's just it had that you know, that newness where I just felt like it had good bones, and it was worth actually doing the work to bring this thing back to life. Okay, so I've got this little Yamaha Spinet piano, still has some junk on top of it, but what's going on is it has some springs, most of the keys actually, where the little return spring is popped out of place, and the keys kind of choose when they want to work. It's when the hammer actually falls back, then, you know, but the spring that's supposed to help them return back is not working. That one's okay. So yeah, there's quite a few of them. I would say about half of them at least throughout the piano. So I gotta figure out what's going on with those springs. Do I need to replace them? Do I need to redesign something that works better? Because they're all kind of popping out of place. And the other thing that's going on with this piano is, well, I'm gonna end up getting rid of that screen. Even though the sound kind of vents out of there, I'm gonna come up with something that looks a little bit better. And the other thing is the veneer on this piano is terrible. There were some pieces that were coming off really easily. I mean, you could literally put masking tape anywhere on this piano, try to peel the masking tape off, and it'll take the veneer with it. And you can see down here, even with, I mean, by finger, you can pretty much lift this stuff off. I mean, and then it peels, just like that. So I'm gonna go around, I'm gonna undo all this outer layer of veneer and probably give this thing a really nice paint job. I'm thinking of doing, look at that, easy as that. I'm thinking about doing kind of an unusual color on this one, maybe a nice teal blue or something, who knows. But it's a great sounding little Spinet piano, so if I can get all these keys to work properly and know that they're gonna last, it's gonna be worth restoring. It's a Yamaha, and the tone, it sounds great. Even the bass section, it's the ones that work. It's a little tingy, but that's normal for a Spinet on those low notes, but this one at least has a little bit more body to the sound. So, you know, it's a Yamaha. If anything, it's going to be better than a lot of the short ones. So there we go. Now, as you can see, cosmetically, this thing was a bit of a nightmare. But that's what makes it fun. You know, I love that I can be creative with these, and I'm not really worried about messing something up. I mean, they come to me in terrible condition, so I'm going to keep on going with it. Teardown wasn't too bad on this one. A lot of these parts come off really easily, even the legs, the little blocks and the lid and all that, and I just kind of worked my way through. But you'll see here where I get a little bit more into the sound mesh fabric as well, and how we're going to replace that. The sound actually comes through, so when you take that off, it's just a wooden frame with a center divider, and the rest of it's open. So that's cool because you want the sound to come out, especially on a small piano like this, and this one actually sounds really good. But we're gonna do something different here. I don't like the way it looks. I'm gonna take all that screen off and do something that looks better, but we'll see in the end. So far I'm taking off all the veneer, so all that stuff needs to come off except for the edges. They're pretty tight, so there's certain places that are still good. But the areas that are just peeling right off, I'm taking it all off, because you could never put good paint over that and expect it to stay. Now, one of the most time-consuming things that holds me up the most on any of my piano restorations so far is when I have wood repairs that are either missing a big chunk, or maybe it's a veneer or even a layer of structural wood that's, you know, thick enough where it needs to stay. But let's say the glue has come loose, or some moisture in the past has caused a little bit of a delamination between the plies. Those are the repairs that typically are the most tedious and the most time consuming, because I'm typically using my aircraft grade resin. If you guys follow that Vader car build that I'm doing, I use that West System resin all the time, and this stuff bonds to pretty much everything. So the West System resin to me is a very good structural repair type of thing. And I mean, even on the grand pianos, if part of the main case that's curved, you know, I can look underneath the bottom of them sometimes and see a layer or two that seems to have a small bit of delamination. I can literally take some of my little syringes with the flat tip needles and I'll push resin up into those layers, and you know, I'll literally like clamp them back together, and that stuff just holds like crazy. So there wasn't a lot of that to do on this piano, thankfully, and that definitely helped the process go a little bit quicker, and I was able to get more into the surfacing. You know, the wood, after removing the veneer, it's going to have glue on it, so you gotta scrape and sand that old glue off, and it kind of powders off. And then the even though you sand the surface, it's not really smooth enough for this automotive type paint job that I put on it. So you end up having to do a nice skim coat of some body filler or something to fill in the wood and get rid of a lot of that grain before you even get to the primer phase. So not too much on this one, but you still got to go through the process to get that automotive paint to really look right. So with automotive paint, before any of the real fun starts, you got to go through a tedious process of smoothing out the surface. And that's typically, you know, any type of a wood filler. Of course, with automotive, I like to use actual body filler because it's just a lot stronger. Of course, it's a little more expensive. It's harder to work with because you gotta be quick. It dries fast, and you mix hardener with it and all that stuff. It takes a little bit more experience, I would say, to get good with it. But body filler is a great product. You know, it can be used on lots of different things. And I did a light skim coat of that for this piano, and then of course you get it all smoothed out and get it ready for the primer process. So, you know, it moved along pretty good. I think this one was a pretty smooth job for the most part.
Now, these areas that still have a good tight veneer holding on, you can actually paint over it, but I'm going to prime this as well because there's still really small wood grain indentions that would show through. Since automotive paint is so thin, you need at least a good layer of primer on there. Now, the sides get a little bit more work, and what it is it's basically a polyester filler, and it's a very thin layer. That's what the bluish white colored stuff is that you see on here. And I do such a thin layer that it's never really gonna alter the sound of the wood, if that were a problem, which it wouldn't really make much difference on that case anyway. But maybe the soundboard of the piano, you wouldn't want to put fillers and stuff on that, but as far as the case goes, it's basically more for cosmetic. And that's also what I've done to the lid. I had a small wood repair that had to be done back here, and basically what's happening now is we're getting ready to prime this whole thing because the layer of polyester filler is dry and it's been sanded, and it's just enough to fill in the little areas of the wood grain where the primer would just take way too much. So this is going to make it a little bit easier to get us close to that paint phase.
So that's exciting. We got the Bondo work kind of, you know, smoothed into the surface. We got to go through the primer process and sand it again and make sure all the little divots are out and try to get it as smooth as possible. And then we can get the paint and the clear coat on. So the primer that I use for the pianos is typically going to be somewhere in the, you know, intermediate automotive quality, because an intermediate automotive quality primer will last in the sun for years. You know, it's still great stuff. Sometimes it's a little harder to sand. The really expensive automotive primers can run $600 a gallon, and they'll be easy to sand. They're really hard. They fill in the spots really good. So I don't need all that for a piano because it's not going to sit in the sun. We're not talking about, you know, UV and heat, you know, getting to this thing all the time. So an intermediate kind of, you know, mid-level automotive grade primer is going to be perfect for these projects. Now, it's basically, you know, pretty simple to apply if you're used to a spray gun. you know, there's a hardener that you have to add in because it creates that chemical reaction and actually cures the primer instead of just something you pour straight out of a can that air dries. You know, it's still good, you know, better high-tech kind of stuff versus something you would just go and get from your local home improvement store. So we don't really use any of that for pianos. So that's kind of what we're doing now. The primer's good stuff. The one I use is Finish 1 by Sherwin-Williams, and it sands really good. It's been a great primer to use on things like this. Now I know you're asking, what is that black cloudy stuff that looks like it's been oversprayed all over the gray primer? Well, that's exactly what it is. It's kind of an old hot rod trick, and basically it's what we call in the body shop world as a guide coat. Now they make a dry guide coat. It's like a black powder that you wipe on the surface with this sponge, you know, swab type thing. But we've also found that spray paint works really well too. You know, you're basically putting a darker color on the surface so that as you sand the primer, you're going to see where you've sanded because the primer is going to turn back to gray. So what some of us do is we'll just grab a can of black spray paint and you literally move really fast and you dust it on there. Give it a few minutes to dry and boom, you've got a nice guide coat that's stuck to the surface until you sand it off. And it really shows you very, very well where you've sanded and where you haven't sanded. And of course it also shows you any low imperfections in the surface. I mean, it can show you some highs as well, but you know, as you're sanding, you might run over an area real quick and it knocks the gray straight off, or it knocks the black straight off to where you see a spot of gray real quick. And that's how you know that you have a high spot. Now typically on a wooden item that's not going to be the case, but you just never know. But it definitely shows you those lows. If you have little divots and voids, it's still going to stay, you're going to see the black chalkiness in there because you've sanded the gray, and then the low spot doesn't allow you to sand because the sandpaper doesn't get down in there yet. So it's basically a guide coat, and I use it on pretty much everything that I have to prime before painting.
So a few people have asked me how my paint booth works. And basically what happens is I've got this back wall that I built. I welded a big metal frame and it swings out that way. It's got a wheel on the bottom of it. And then it's got the paint booth fan on top. It's one of those tube axial 18-inch fans like you'd see in a real paint booth, except they're normally 24-inch, depending on the size of the booth. But this one's a 18. It still works great. So that's outlet filters there. And the air that gets sucked through is pretty much trapping the paint there. You know, very minimal paint gets outside. It just should be fairly clean air going outside. And to get inlet air, when the booth is closed off, you got to bring the air in clean also. So we're going to shut this door, come out here. So what happens is I've got inlet filters. So there's not a lot going on out here. So the air going through there, those filters need to be replaced, but there's not a lot of things stirring up dust here and whatnot. So there's the inlet air. Now, where does the garage get air from? Well, what I basically do is have this window, that window open, and then the attic as well has a lot of heat, which is great because it's allowing me to kind of control the temperature if I want the paint to dry faster too. So, kind of like a temperature control booth, but not really. I mean, I can bring it from these windows and have it, you know, kind of cooling the place off. And then as soon as I get done spraying, I can shut the other two windows and I can pull 100% attic air, which it comes out really hot from there in the middle of the day, especially here in the summer in Texas. So that works out pretty good. I literally feel it get warmer in here and it helps cure that clear coat a little bit faster. So that's the way that it works. I'll see if I can back away a little bit. You can kind of see the way that it's set up, and just basically this is even a drop down door, so I can shut the white door. I take the flap on the side and it pivots that way so it locks to the white door, and once I unlock that flap from the wall, that whole back wall kind of flips up to the ceiling. I've got a hoist that pulls it up. So some of you have seen in the intro video how that door comes down and goes up, and that's basically how it works.
Alright, it's always exciting to get some paint going and see a new color You know, I went with this really cool teal color that I got from a paint supply store. It was like a mix match or something, and basically it was on sale. And you know, automotive paint can be extremely expensive for some of these metallic colors. So I said, well man, that's a cool color. And I've been wanting to do a teal piano anyway. Now I ended up adjusting this color just a little bit because it almost had a little bit too much of a classic car kind of blue. Whereas I wanted a little bit more of the green to give it that sea greenish blue kind of color. So I had some emerald green from an old can, and what I did was added, you know, a little bit to it, and it tinted it just right the way that I wanted it. And I thought this color came out really cool. So I've got the teal color sprayed on. It looks super cool. I actually like how the color leaves like a satin finish, but the clear coat's definitely gonna look great on it. I tinted that color just a little bit, and I'm happy that I did because this is exactly what I was going for. And this is a Yamaha, so it's gonna be stunning. And for a little Spinet piano, it sounds great. Here's the lid. So it's pretty much ready. I'm gonna go mix up some clear and get it put on. And I think overall the paint job came out pretty cool, and seems to be a desirable color so far. I've had a lot of people interested. Anytime I post a piano as an example that has a close like teal type color, people are always into it. So I think this thing's gonna sell pretty quick. Now I think the legs and the little bar that goes across the front of the keys, I had originally sprayed the original color, the teal that was in the can, before I tinted it. And I wanted to just see what it looked like before I actually tinted it. So that's what we're doing here. I'm just going back, and you can see I'm scuffing the clear coat on this piece so that I can respray it with the tinted color and it'll all match. Now, one thing that's really important, especially when it comes to these pianos that are more valuable, such as a Yamaha, you want to make sure that you don't just sand off the brand name and then just leave it gone. Because, I mean, that's just something people might be like, well, okay, you can see that it's a Yamaha inside, but then it's like, well, I had it repainted and the logo's just gone. That's kind of, I don't know, to me that would be kind of tacky. So I spend a little bit of time actually measuring the letters and trying to get the spacing correct, and I use my Cricut maker. It's basically a vinyl cutting machine. You know, it's the household version. And I'll make a vinyl stencil and use that to get the paint correct. You know, and typically I'm putting gold or maybe black, whatever the lettering's going to be in. And then we cover up that paint so that I can do the actual paint color. Whenever you peel off the tape or the vinyl, your label color is still there, so you can clear coat all of it together. Now you can also do it backwards. There's times that, or you could say it's backwards or forwards, either way, but you can either do your base color first and then have a stencil that allows you to put the gold lettering inside of it, or you can do the gold or black letter color first and then have your reverse stencils where it's basically the letters you stick on and then you paint your base color last. So either way, as long as both colors end up under the clear coat, you should be good to go. There's a couple different ways to do it, but this is what we're doing now.
So I'm going to measure this, and it looks like from the top tip of the Y, if we start at the 10, and then it goes right to the 14 on the top tip of the A. That's when we make this decal stencil to paint the new Yamaha lettering on. I want to make it right at about 4 inches. Yeah, so that should be good. Now, as far as the up and down, it looks like the bottom of the letters are sitting right about right about 5/8 from that bottom line. So, and then as far as the top, it's somewhere around 2 inches, but maybe a little bit less, like a 1/16 less than 2 inches. Maybe right on 2 inches, but it's close. Alright, before I completely get rid of this, it looks like you're going to want to center the M and the A right at somewhere around 27 5/8 is like the center. At least, well, no, hold on, I'm looking at the A and the H. So somewhere around 26 7/8. I'm going to measure from the other side and see if it's about the same. So what's going on with this one is the Yamaha logos I was able to find are really close together. So I'm having to go in and use the square to slice one letter at a time, and I'm going to space them out the way that it looks on the piano. So we're basically going to get this decal right and get it cut out. So I've almost got it, and I found that the original piano spacing for the letters was actually a lot more than this. So I've already spaced them out a little bit, but I'm going to go probably double that because there's a lot more on the original logo. So we're trying to get as close to correct as possible. So what I want to do first is I'm going to spray a little bit of gold base coat right here in the middle area. Now I'm going to have the measurements ready, and I'm going to use this Yamaha decal that I cut out on the Cricut machine. We're going to put it on so that when we spray the teal, the Yamaha gold is still going to show through once we peel those letters off. Once we peel the letters off, we got teal with the gold Yamaha underneath. And we're going to clear coat the whole thing so it's all protected and sealed off.
Alright, this part takes a high level of patience and focus. I mean, having a steady hand is definitely great. You can see I'm kind of using a razor blade, but I'm barely just ticking the corner of the vinyl so that I can grab it with my fingernail. And really, you need to wait until the paint's pretty dry before you do this. I mean, if it's, some people say if you put too much on and it's real thick and it hardens, and you might peel some of it off. But if you use the vinyl properly and you put the right amount of base coat, you know, you peel it at the right time, it's going to come off pretty clean. And, you know, you just have to be really careful. It's typically getting that little piece of vinyl started that's the hard part. You know, even your fingernail could dig into the color a little bit. So it just takes that patience. You have to be really easy with it. Now we get some clear coat put on and see how it all looks with a nice glossy layer over it. I also had the little side blocks that I was clear coating at this time too, so we're finishing it up. Now every piano has its share of brass and little metal parts that decorate or whatever. A lot of them are brass. Now some pianos you'll see they're actually a silver color, so they could either be chrome plated or maybe even made of stainless steel, you never know. But this piano happened to have a lot of brass, and you know, you can pretty much resurface and polish brass back to a really beautiful shine. Now sometimes it stays shiny, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the type of brass, I think, or maybe how you finish it off. I haven't quite figured out the science of it yet, but I've had certain brass pieces that stay super shiny and certain ones that tarnish the second time you touch them again. And I actually have a brass lacquer that I use for certain parts if I really don't want them to tarnish anytime soon, or I'm kind of unsure if they're going to stay polished or not. But you know, there's a few different ways to do that as well. And the pedals came out super good on this one. Even if there's little nicks or scratches, you can always sand those out. You work your way through the sandpaper grits, you know, say all the way up from, you know, maybe 320 up to, you know, 1000 or 2000 grit. Before you know it, you're practically polishing these things. And when you put the buffer on them, they just glisten. They come out to an amazing shine. So that's always really cool. Also on this piano, the wheels were a little old and I think one of them was a bit stuck, so I had to use some WD-40 in the vise and, you know, kind of get that loose and get it working again. So what I end up doing is taking the wheels, and you can't do much for the rust on the casters like on the steel, but these areas that are brass, I can actually light sand them with maybe some 2000 grit and then polish them up really nice so they look shiny again. And I like to kind of do what I can with them, at least so they look a little bit better. And then we'll put them back on the legs. So polishing up the brass can be extremely tedious. Like, depending on whether it had a brass lacquer on it before and it's like corroded under the lacquer. You know, sometimes it'll cause it to corrode more, or if it's chipped off. Just depends, but I'll take different grits of sandpaper, like this is 600 I believe, and I'll sand a lot of that tarnish off first, and then I got to run back over it with like some 1500 grit or 2000, because it's going to be a little bit more difficult to polish out the 600 grit scratches. You guys can hear those Texas cicadas out there, I'm sure. Man, they're so loud during the summer. But it's kind of relaxing. It's part of Texas. So yeah, that's what we do here. Basically, it's a very long, tedious process. I'm probably going to spend an hour just polishing these two, you know, legs for the Spinet piano. Have these little brass pieces at the bottom. I'll probably spend 2 hours. Alright, so now, this is actually 2000 grit. I'm gonna see, and I'm wet sanding it so that, you know, it keeps it a little cleaner. The dust just from building up in the paper.
So we're sanding all the tarnish off and getting the last bit, and now this is leveling out those 600 grit scratches a little bit so that it buffs a little easier. So you can see this one came out pretty nice. That's gonna really look good on that piano, even though it's not perfect. You know, you can't get some of the rust and stuff off, but when it's down on the floor, you're just gonna see that shiny brass. It's gonna match the pedals real nice. Should look pretty awesome. Now, one of the wheels is actually stuck. It doesn't rotate. So you can see I've got the wheel locked in the vise and it doesn't move. So what I'm gonna try and do is free this up. Now, this is what you'd call soft jaws. This is basically some pieces of aluminum that are bent or angled. And that way when I clamp that wheel in the vise, the steel jaws don't damage the wheel itself. So I'm using these soft jaws basically they'll compress a little bit more and kind of act as a grip. And I'm gonna try to see if I can free this wheel with some penetrating oil and maybe a little bit of a pry bar in there or something. So we'll see. Alright, so with a little bit of light tapping back here and some forcefulness, got this to move. Now, it's not moving a whole lot yet, but it's enough for me to put some more oil in it and see if we can get it to free up. It's possible too that at some point this thing might have had some kind of damage or something where maybe this little triangular frame bent and it's actually tight onto the wheel. So it could be corrosion or it could be something to do with this, you know. Okay, slowly but surely I've been working this thing around the vise. I pull it back, loosen it just a little, get the wheel to turn in there. It's getting a little easier, so that's good. So pull it back now. Work it that way a bit. Now, I don't know if this wheel will ever turn as freely as it once did, but at least it has the chance. I'm going to see if I can keep going with it a little bit and get it pretty free, but we'll see. It's getting there. So these casters use one small screw that goes in the side, and it goes into the leg right there, so you know it goes that way. And then from underneath, there's 4 more screws that go in, and you have to turn the caster wheel to line up the hole. So that's how these go on. Now, being that this is a small Spinet piano, I guess Yamaha found it wise to cover the bottom panel with some of this like speaker mesh type stuff to let some of the sound out. So I like that. The bottom of this piano is very vented. You can hear all the strings coming from underneath. But this was all tore up, so we're gonna replace this with just some nice black speaker mesh. I tried to find some goldish stuff that might kind of go with the gold pedals on the piano, since the teal and the gold have a really nice contrast, but I didn't find anything I really liked in this speaker mesh type stuff. So I just went with black, and I think it's gonna look good because I'm gonna do a bench that's painted to match the piano, and I'm gonna use like a black for a padding on the bench, so it'll match this. Hopefully all will look good, but yeah, this is coming off.
So you'll see what I found. I got this black speaker grill cloth padding that's pretty nice. I thought it looked really good, and I think I ordered on Amazon for 20 or 30 bucks. You know, I ended up getting a piece that it was big enough for me to stretch across the whole thing. And this was a pretty easy replacement. I used to do speaker boxes and I'd put carpet on them and all that, so I'm kind of used to this whole stretching and stapling thing. But it came out pretty good. It's a fairly easy repair, and I like the black, I think, better than that goldish stuff that was on there too. Alright, so here's a little rundown on the speaker grill panel. Well, it's not really a speaker, it's more like a soundboard panel. Basically, I stapled the back, as you can probably see in the time lapse. I had to put the fabric on. Now, what I do on the bottom for the pins is just stretch it a bit, and then I make a small hole. Let's see if you can see this. Make a small hole for the little dowel pins to come through, because those need to go in the bottom of the piano. So you got to allow the fabric to pass over those. And then on the top, there's actually a metal plate. Since it's a Yamaha piano, you know, they make it kind of nice. They've got this brass plate on here. So you'll put that on outside of the fabric once it's done. Just find the holes, and then that's where the little clip, it kind of slides under that little spring clip. And then the other thing was the handle. Now the handle is a dark enough brown. It's actually plastic. So sometimes plastics are a little temperamental about what kind of paint sticks to them. I mean, I could have maybe tried to do a gold to match like the pedals, or maybe just paint it black. But I felt like it's so high up and it's so not really going to be seen very much that, you know, it's fine to just leave it brown so we don't deal with paint not sticking to it. And it's just a dark enough plastic. So I'm going to actually hammer that in with a rubber tipped hammer to try not to damage it. It's just a really tight, kind of pressed fit, so let's see if it works. Yeah, there we go, that's perfect. So now that's in, nice and snug. And I'm going to test fit this panel. I think it's pretty much ready to go on. Oh, that looks beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's perfect. Wow. Alright, that looks probably better than I thought it would. I'm going to grab the camera and do a little bit of a... So now you can see the paint wraps nicely around the wood panels. And not the best lighting here right now, but man, that's looking sweet. It's a nice, you know, nice paint edge all the way around, and the black just meets right up nicely with it. That's so cool. All right. Well, this is the part where things got a little less fun for me, because, you know, I was like, hey, the cosmetic work's done, the piano looks great, now let's get all the keys working. Well, it ended up not being such an easy task, but slowly, you know, over time I worked on a few hammers and here and there. It's basically, if you ever have to replace the flange chords in a upright piano, not just a spinet, but there's that little string I mentioned earlier in the video that holds the spring and allows the hammer to retract more normally. Because, you know, in the comparison really is like in a grand piano you don't have this. you know, you play the notes and then gravity brings the hammer back. Well, in an upright piano, there's springs and little chords that will bring the hammer back and kind of give it an assist, even though it's going to bounce a little bit, and gravity helps a little, but you need these mechanisms to accelerate it and help it along. So yeah, come to find out, I was going to have to do all 88 flange chords and bridle straps, so that process took a little while, and you know, eventually I kind of got it done, but that was what we did to finish out this piano. And you know, finally saw some light at the end of the tunnel. But overall it came out great. Loved this one. Alright, so the main issues that I have to fix on the action for the teal piano is there's some felts that have been eaten by carpet bugs or some type of, who knows, mice, whatever. Looks like there's carpet bugs dead in them. So the other thing, and kind of the bigger thing, is that pretty much all the flange cords are broken except 3. Now if you see all these little spring wires here, they're not supposed to be that way. One of the ones that wasn't broken, I actually took out, and it's over here. And the way it's supposed to work is there's a flange cord. It's a little piece of, let's see if we can get into a good light. Little piece of string here you can see that holds that spring and allows this to help the hammer kind of return properly. Well, this is like maybe one of 3 that aren't broken. The rest of them are broken. Now the string is just glued into these little slots back here on the back of the flange. So I basically got to clean the old glue out of them and glue a new piece of flange cord in. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to replace all of them, even though there's 3 or 4 that aren't broken. I'm just going to get rid of them because those old ones are probably about ready to go. I'm cutting pieces of flange cord here. I have a little length marker that I made, and you can see I've already fixed one of them. Just basically glue is drying right there. So you can see the new piece of black cord is glued into the back. And whenever you do it, you're going to want to glue that string, you know, about as far into that slot as you can, because the more surface area holding it, the more you know that it's going to have a good bond. You don't want to just put the string like to here. You know, you want it to go all the way back so you got lots of area for the glue to hold on to it. So there you go. That's what's going on. Also, there's some bridle straps that are broken, so we're replacing those too. Now the way I'm doing these is probably different from the way that people do it. I didn't get the bridle straps with the clips, but these were glued onto this before, so I'm pretty much doing it the same way, but just a little different. So we're going to try it on 1 or 2 and see how it works. And if I know it works, I've got enough of those to replace all of those as well. So that's what it is about pianos that have been neglected on maintenance for 30 or 40 years. They just, you know, you have to catch up, and that's what we're doing here. Very tedious. So there's 88 keys on the piano. 1 down, 87 to go. Alright, so finally, after a painfully long feat of trying to get these keys done 1 or 5 or 10 at a time, I feel like it was probably almost a year that the action was sitting out of this piano, and that's why it's actually taken me a long time to finish this video. Finally, I got it all done and put back together, so you get to see a little play test. I was playing a Journey song. Of course, this was before I had it sold and realized the guy wanted a matching bench. I just had one you'll see that I'm sitting on, but that's like my loaner bench that I use with different pianos. So yeah, so it's definitely getting there, and I'm glad that I at least took one short video where you could hear it working. It's not in tune yet, obviously. I'm not going to tune it till I get it to the new buyer's house, but yeah, at least you get to see it. So here it goes. Well, I gotta say, I'm glad this restoration is done, and you know, I got it listed. It sold pretty quick, and the buyer even wanted a matching bench, so you're gonna see a short clip that I post of that. And really, altogether, it's just amazing what you can do if you really put your mind to it. You know, buy the tools if you like this kind of stuff. I encourage, I mean, you're only limited to the tools that you have, really. I mean, you can figure anything out if you're willing to dig for it. So, I'll see you guys again soon. I'm working on a few videos right now, and there's actually going to be a couple of my drumming background. One of them is probably going to be a custom drum kit that I'm building, and then the other one was this, like, basically barn find. I found a really cheap deal on a drum set that was practically complete enough for me to take it out and play gigs with it. So you guys hit that subscribe button, stick around, throw me any questions if you got them. I'm always happy to share the knowledge, and we'll see you next time.